Mr. Martin's our chair. Board Member Noonan has called the meeting to order. I'll first start by taking roll call. Board Member Kitchen.
Here.
Board Member Noonan.
Here.
Board Member Romy.
Here.
Board Member Martins. So with a 4-member board, a quorum consists of 3 members, so we do have a quorum to hold a meeting this afternoon. I would refer to Margie to give us an update to confirm that the packet has been posted and our Kansas Open Meeting Act required notice has been provided.
I can confirm the packet was posted and the required notice of today's meeting was provided.
So I will turn it back to Acting Chair Newman to take action on the minutes that are in your packet, and then after that we'll begin our new business.
Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from September 9th?
I so move.
I second it.
So we have a motion and second to approve the minutes of the September 9th meeting. Could all those in favor please say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
That motion passes. The minutes are accepted. And I would like to inform the board that we have 3 public hearing items under new business this evening. And the first item to conduct a public hearing on is an application filed by Gleason and Son Signs on behalf of the Historic Fox Theater Foundation. And they are requesting approval of a certificate of compatibility to allow the installation of a projecting sign on Santa Fe, on the Santa Fe facade of the theater, and they are requesting approval of a 6-foot by 12-foot electronic changeable copy sign on the walnut facade of the Stiefel Theater building. And so in the Downtown Business Improvement District, in order to obtain a sign permit, your plans for signage must first be reviewed and approved by the Design Review Board. So we have brought these 2 items forward for the board's review. We provided some background information about the Stiefel Theater, and as part of an ongoing renovation and upgrade of the Stiefel Theater, the Theater Board of Directors has expressed an interest in having an electronic message center sign to advertise and highlight upcoming shows and events. We've indicated what the definition of an electronic changeable copy sign is. If you're looking for a large example, it would be the sign that's at the intersection of Midway and Ohio, which is an electronic changeable copy or electric message center sign for the Tony's Pizza Event Center. Under the city's sign code, as a general rule, electronic message center signs are not allowed in the Central Business District, but the code contains one exception from this prohibition, and that is for theaters that are listed on a historic register. So the Stiefel Theater falls within that exception. And because this property is located in the BID, a public hearing was scheduled for this afternoon. And your role is to review the design, the size, and location of the 2 signs, the ticket window sign and the electronic changeable copy sign, and determine whether those signs would conflict with the design guidelines for downtown Salina. As a historic register property, this sign also had to be reviewed by the Heritage Commission, and they reviewed the electronic changeable copy sign last night and approved its installation. You are serving different roles in this case. In the case of the Heritage Commission, their role was to decide whether an electronic changeable copy sign should be allowed at all. Your role is to look at the design of the sign, its location, its size, and determine whether those things put together conform with the design guidelines for signs in downtown Salina. We have reviewed this, and both signs would be internally illuminated. The sign on the side wall facing Walnut would be a full color display It's our understanding that this type of sign has a higher resolution than, say, the sign at Midway in Ohio. So the resolution would actually be closer almost to a digital television screen, more so than the sign that serves the Tony's Pizza event center. So the design guidelines state if the internal illumination is used, it should be subordinate to the overall building composition. And so what we would point out is that the Walnut Street frontage of the theater is 120 feet. This sign would only occupy 12 feet of that. It's also located in an alcove that was historically used to display movie posters for upcoming movies and shows. So one way to look at this is that the theater's proposing to continue the historical use of that wall space, but just with updated technology. So we have reviewed this request in conformance with the sign guidelines, and we would note that the changeable copy sign comprises only a portion of the overall sign package for the theater, and it does not touch or affect or make any changes to the historical marquee that's on the front of the building. This sign will be coordinated with the overall facade on Walnut. It's on the secondary and not the primary front facade of the building. It's set in such a way that it will emphasize the structural elements of the facade. It's not going to cover up any historical or architectural features. It will provide the public with information about upcoming shows and events, and it's located in a way that it would be readable at a pedestrian level. It will be internally illuminated, but it's only 72 square feet in size, and it's subordinate to the overall composition of the theater. So if you are comfortable approving the two signs, we have some recommended conditions on page 8 of your report. The first one is a standard right from the city's ordinance. And just for the board's benefit, most of these types of signs are equipped with the automatic dimmer that's either part of their software program or there's a photo cell. And what that means is that the brightness of the sign adjusts based on the day or night brightness. So at high noon, generally a sign like this has to be, the brightness level needs to be higher because it's competing with sunlight, whereas after dark, the brightness is usually dialed down because there's less light, ambient light around it. So the city of Salina requires that this type of sign automatically dim down after sunset. The other thing is if they were to change the size or the design or the materials of this sign in a significant way, that would be brought back to this board to determine whether those changes should be approved. And then an item that was discussed last night dealt with the installation and removal of the sign. There was some concern on staff's part about bolting the sign to the side of the building, but it was explained last night at the Heritage Commission that the plan is to put the sign and use the existing mortar joints for the placement of the sign. So if it was ever removed, those areas could be, the mortar areas could be patched up much more easily than if it was installed directly into the brick. So the plan is to mount the sign using the mortar joints around it and not to place any bolts or anything into the actual brickwork. As to the ticket sign, there was a flat sign that staff approved administratively that was in the alcove, as was pointed out last evening. About the only place you can see that sign from is if you're at Martinelli's across the street. So their plan is to extend that out, make it a 3-sided projecting sign, and it will have similar characteristics to the existing marquee there on Santa Fe. So with that, staff would be open to any questions you have about this proposal or about electronic changeable copy signs in general. again, the question of whether a historic theater should be allowed to have an electronic changeable copy sign. The Heritage Commission approved that last night, but your role today is to look at the actual design and location of the two signs and determine whether those signs as proposed would conform with the city's downtown design guidelines. So I'll be open to any questions.
I actually don't have any questions.
I don't either.
No, I don't. I think it'll look great.
So we've laid out options for you to approve as submitted, to approve with conditions, to postpone consideration, or to deny the application. Our thought was if after review of this application and any additional information presented at the hearing, and you're comfortable with approving this, we would just recommend option 2 with the 3 conditions there we have attached on page 8 of the report. So those are your 4 options that you could entertain this afternoon.
I will move that we approve option 2, including the staff conditions or recommendations 1, 2, and 3 as part of my motion.
Before we have a second, we should probably check to see if anyone from the public has anything they'd like to share or if they have any questions. Is there anyone on Zoom or in the room that has questions or like to say anything? I don't see anything on Zoom, so if we have a second, we can move forward.
I'll second it.
So we have a motion and a second to approve a certificate of compatibility for the ticket office sign and the electronic changeable copy sign. All those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
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 Okay, that motion passes 3-0, and I believe that's the last board meeting that Mr. Tazika will have to attend, unless he wants to come back tomorrow. Our next items, under item 3.2, we're conducting a public hearing on 2 applications that relate to proposed modifications that are involved in the conversion of Campbell Plaza from public to private use. And so the first application is a certificate of compatibility application, and we're looking at that certificate of compatibility to allow for the following modifications. The first one being the disassembly and removal of the existing covered stage in the southwest corner of the plaza. So Mr. Hers is pointing those out on the screen. The second aspect would be to replace that removed stage, construction of a new smaller stage that would be at the east end of the existing plaza. The third element that you would be reviewing would be the proposed construction of a fence to create a public pedestrian pathway along the south 8 feet of the plaza, and also it would be essentially a perimeter fence around the plaza. And then the fourth aspect, which this board has looked at before, but we do need to confirm, is any exterior modifications to the south facade and to the building abutting Campbell Plaza on the north. So as to the certificate of compatibility, we provided you with background about this building and about previous action taken by the board. And the most recent was on August 8th, 2019. You looked at Restore Properties plans for renovating the existing masonry facades on the west and south sides of the building. And a certificate of compatibility was approved at that meeting. And with the condition if there's any significant changes to the exterior design drawings, these would be presented to the board's administrative staff to determine whether additional review is required. And so, following that, in 2021, in May, the City Commission approved a transfer agreement and a license agreement regarding development of the property located at 123 South Santa Fe, which is directly north of Campbell Plaza. And that agreement provided for Community Improvement District funding to assist in the redevelopment of this property as the Prickly Pear Restaurant, which would be a Tex-Mex style restaurant. The license agreement part of it formalized the terms under which Prickly Pear could utilize a portion of Campbell Plaza as an outdoor dining space in conjunction with the restaurant. So after that action, there was some additional work and looking at the timing, looking at how this would get done, and Restore Construction, which is associated with Restore Properties, proposed to the city that it enter into a guaranteed maximum price contract to complete the elements of the Campbell Plaza and Ad Astra stage projects. So on September 13th, the City Commission approved a contract with Restore Construction to carry out all the work associated with renovations to Campbell Plaza. They approved an amended transfer agreement, and they also approved an amended license agreement which further addressed hours of operation, site control, and utilization of the plaza as an extension of the drinking establishment license for the adjoining restaurant. So those actions taken by the City Commission were all subject to review and approval by the Design Review Board. So the scope of work that's in the construction contract calls for demolition, removal, and relocation of the Campbell Plaza stage roof structure to a new location at the northeast corner of the city-owned parking lot. That's at the southwest corner of Santa Fe and Ash. The second aspect of that is that the new stage and storage room would be constructed at that location. So if you recall, there's an elevated stage at Campbell Plaza, and that is being removed. That would have to be rebuilt at the corner of Ash and Santa Fe to provide an elevated stage there. Part of their contract involves removing the existing concrete stage, all the planters, and all the existing paving within Campbell Plaza, the construction of a new stage at the east end of the plaza, installation of an artificial turf activity area within the plaza, and installation of a perimeter fence with 3 gated entries and an 8-foot wide pedestrian way that will be left open along the south wall. The proposal also involves installation overhead LED string lighting. So to give you even more detail, attached to your report is an Exhibit B that spells those things out in additional detail. So Tim Blake, the prospective owner-operator of the Prickly Pear Grill and Cantina, has filed this application requesting DRB review and approval of the proposed modifications both to the building and the adjoining Campbell Plaza. And so our report tonight is going to focus on 5 things: the exterior modifications to the south facade of the building abutting Campbell Plaza on the north, including the addition of a second-story fire escape, construction of an emergency fire escape, staircase at the southeast end of the building. This would provide an emergency exit from the second floor of the proposed restaurant. You will be looking at the disassembly and removal of the existing covered Campbell Plaza stage. We'll be looking at the plans for the construction of a new, smaller stage at the east end of the plaza and construction of a fence to create a pedestrian pathway. The fence consists of powder coat painted steel tube frame and post with stainless steel cable rails. So the overall plan is to take that building at 123 and create a dining area on the first floor with 61 seats, a dining area on the second floor with 81 seats, an emergency exit through a fire escape. And then south of the building, the applicant's proposing to demolish the existing Campbell Plaza, including disassembly and removal of the covered stage, in order to create a fenced-in dining and recreation area that would be used by patrons of the restaurant and also by the general public. So if we're looking at dimensions, the entire plaza measures 50 feet wide by 120 feet deep. But the items are, you have an 8-foot walkway on the south, and it's set in on the west, so it's actually 42 by 117. And then if you subtract out the turf areas and the stage, the area available for the actual dining and recreation is, or for the dining area is less than that. The new stage would be smaller than the existing one. It'd be 20 feet wide and 17 feet deep. It will be elevated and accessed by an ADA ramp. The fence, as I noted, will be 3 feet tall. It consists of a powder coat painted steel frame and posts with stainless steel cable rails. The plan is to leave an open public pedestrian pathway on the south 8 feet of the plaza. And again, because this is located in Business Improvement District 1, and the changes to the exterior of the building and the proposed modifications to Campbell Plaza are required to be reviewed before permits can be issued for those changes. So I'm not going to go over them other than to highlight that this involves a number of aspects of our design guidelines. It involves building rehabilitation for the restaurant building. It involves new construction in terms of the new stage and the perimeter fence. It involves demolition of the concrete stage and the existing concrete floor in Campbell Plaza, as well as the overhead structure. And then it also involves relocation. And that relocation that's proposed is to take the shade structure that's at the current stage and relocate it over to the corner of Santa Fe and Ash. So in our staff comments and our analysis, staff looked at what has been submitted carefully, and we had in 2019 facade modifications on the west and south facades of the restaurant building. With the original submittal, staff is unable to tell from the elevations drawings submitted whether, other than the fire escape, whether there's any modifications or whether the plans are actually consistent with the plans reviewed and approved by the Design Review Board. And so, if that is the case, staff requests that the applicant and the project architect confirm that the plans approved by the Design Review Board in 2019 or what is proposed. If that's not the case, then we would request that the applicant and the project architect highlight and itemize the changes to the exterior that are being proposed. As to the staircase, the board needs to consider whether the addition of the staircase on a secondary facade would negatively affect the architectural character of the restaurant building. As to the removal or relocation of the existing stage roof structure, you should consider whether that relocation of the 1986 stage would improve the visual appearance and usability of Campbell Plaza. We don't have any specific design guidelines for fencing or fence material, so as you look at the fencing, you should consider whether the proposed perimeter fence design and material is attractive, durable, and compatible with the plaza and surrounding buildings. You should also consider whether it's compatible with the fencing used at other sidewalk dining locations. And as to the new stage, it would be 20 feet by 17. It would occupy about half the width of the dining and recreation area. And so staff would note that if you look at the design for the stage, it is designed to be supported by heavy timber construction with wood beams that would support the roof structure. And the timber construction that's being proposed is not necessarily consistent with the surrounding buildings or the predominant building materials in the downtown area. So staff would request that the project architect clarify the rationale behind the choice of the heavy timber construction and any aspects of that design that are intended to help the stage blend in with the surrounding area. So as we presented you with your alternatives, and so on page 12, and so you can address this all in one motion or action, but we would recommend that the board review and comment on each design element individually. And so to summarize, the two areas that staff has questions or clarifications on are, in our review of the plans, we were unable to confirm for the board that the west and south facades, the design and the material, which is supposed to be brick veneer, whether there's any changes to that. And then we also have questions about the rationale behind the choice of heavy timber construction and any aspects of the stage design that are intended to help that blend in with the surrounding area. So with that, I think I'll back up and see, as we look at these items, if there's any questions about the proposal, about the facade modifications to the building or the exterior staircase.
Well, so your recommendation is that we take those 1 through 5 and just go through each one?
Yeah,
And make-
I was going to see, I'm going to try to address them each one and just see if the board has comments or questions about each of these elements. And the first element that we're looking at is the exterior facade of the restaurant building, particularly the west and south facades is what we're focusing on. And if staff from the plan submitted could have been able to confirm that the design had not changed, we would have reported that, but we honestly couldn't tell from the plans we received whether they were intended to be consistent with what the board had previously approved in 2019.
So just as a point of reference, this particular slide that we're looking at shows the south elevation drawing of what was originally proposed and approved in 2019. And below it is what the applicant's designer has submitted, showing the south wall. Now, they've indicated to us that their intention is to provide the same exterior. One thing that staff is a little confused on is if there is an addition on the second story, because it does look like the second story goes further to the east than what is currently there today, and if all of the windows on the first floor are being removed because of the staircase. So there's just some confusion about some of the details that are being proposed that maybe the applicant or his architect could help provide. And I do believe we do have Dan Knight, the project architect, online.
Yeah, excuse me, yes. And I don't know if you can go back to, you had the floor plan of the prickly pear at one point there. But the windows back toward the back of the building are being removed because that's the kitchen area for the prickly pear. And they didn't need any windows. And the second floor for that. And yes, that second floor was expanded to make it a little larger to get the restrooms on the second floor. And the intent is, yes, like you said, to keep that south facade. We'll have the same brick pattern that was approved on the previous application.
So is the second floor being lengthened to the east?
Yes.
Okay, so to
Can you describe on the staircase of what material the railing will be made of? Or what, and will it be similar to the railings in the plaza itself, or will it be something completely different?
As it's drawn here, it's just meant to be a steel prefabricated, like almost not really prefabricated steel staircase. So it'd be all steel elements. So it's not the same cable rail as the plaza.
So to recap what Mr. Knight has shared, the second story is going to extend to the east. The windows on the first floor are being removed because it's a kitchen area. And the brick pattern and brick soldering that you see on the south facade will be carried across the entire south side. So I think we have some kind of close-ups that kind of indicate what we're talking about. So there's a brick soldering pattern that was originally approved, along with a regular, what we call standard brick stacking, and all of that will be carried through on the entire south side. That's what you're indicating, correct, Dan?
That's correct.
And here's an example of the brick. So this brick would be carried out on the south side and as well as on the west side.
And did you say on the stairs that they will match? I mean, he was saying that it's not the same material, but it will match, I'm assuming. Okay.
I think what he was indicating is visually it would have a compatible visual effect, even though it would be a different material and construction.
Well, I know, Dean, you had a question of whether or not it would interfere. To me, there's so many staircases on the back sides, halves of the buildings downtown, and I don't think this would feel out of place there. So just on my own personal opinion, I don't think visually that it would be any different than what we see traditionally downtown.
Yeah, and it's just brought to you so you can review it and see it, because at the August 2019 meeting, the staircase wasn't part of what the board reviewed, so we just wanted to share that with you.
Well, I do have a question about number 3. Am I skipping, or can
No.
we move to number 3?
Are you talking about the stage part now?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's actually about the mural that exists there. I mean, I read in the documentation that it would be up to the city to decide what to do on that, and at their expense. Has a determination been made of what will happen to the mural?
I think we have Brad Anderson on the Zoom here. Dustin, he might be in the best position to answer that about the mural, if he's unmuted. Can you address that, Brad?
I sure can. We've been in conversation with the developers for a year on the possible need for the demolishing of the brick wall that the mural is on. We've had conversations with the artist. We've also, our understanding is that request has been made for that wall to come down. And it has nothing to do with the age or the condition of the mural, but it does, in order for the building owner, for where Lauren Quinn Flowers on the south side of the plaza, to be able to have access to do adequate repair to that wall. And so we are in support or understand the need for that mural to go, and the artist has been notified and understands community development and the unfortunateness of a mural in such good shape. The only thing that we will be doing as a staff, and we just inspected it today to see the progress of the demolition of the stage and plaza area that's currently taking place, is to collect either after the overhang, the stage cover goes away, or before, to document as best we can the final condition of the mural before the wall comes down. So we are aware, we're included and supportive of what needs to happen for this project to move forward.
Is there a possibility, part of this project, of having, once the wall is reinstalled and stabilized, of a new mural in its place?
My understanding, and that's probably not mine to answer, but my understanding is all of that, yes, the short answer is my understanding that the private sector is looking at, because the wall that the current mural is on is a public project funded through National Endowment for the Arts and public funding. A new mural would go through a different process of being privately funded, but that it is being planned for that south wall of the plaza area. And I don't think it's a condition, but it has been shown in the drawings, and our understanding is that's one of the next projects that will take place as part of the Salina Canvas project. Additionally, our staff is in conversation with the Leadership Salina group about some possible new murals to be included at the new stage location on Santa Fe and Ash Street.
Does that address your question, Katie?
Yes.
Okay. Any other
well-
questions about the stage relocation?
Not the stage relocation at all. I do have I had the same questions about the timber for the new stage. I don't have any memory of any timber downtown. So if the developer or the architect would explain the reasoning for that.
Yeah, we could, Dustin, if we go maybe back to Mr. Knight, staff had asked just to get some additional clarification of the rationale behind that choice of material, and if there's any things that are being done to help the stage blend in with the surrounding area.
Yeah, the initial conversation with the developer was just to discuss what would provide a nice look and feel for that size of stage and at that end of the plaza. And we were just throwing around ideas such as a pergola type structure. And that's just kind of how the direction of the conversation went. And hadn't really looked around at other materials downtown, but there is a restroom building in the parking lot to the east that has, kind of an overhang. And I didn't take a close look though to see if it was wood structure, or I know it's part masonry, but that's just kind of how the direction of the conversation went. I don't know if Jacob wants to have any more input on that or not, but.
Yeah, I don't recall how we got to the timber, but I do recall something that maybe it was going to help with the acoustics of the stage. We looked at some, in the very beginning of this, we looked at actually some prefab kits that were timber that we're possibly looking to bring in, and ultimately decided that we thought we could build it very similar to those kits in place and do it cheaper than what the kits were selling for. So we just kind of tried to model off of one of those kits.
What's the facade material of the remainder of the stage, like the back wall? What's the intended materials there?
Cedar shiplap.
So it sounds like it wasn't based on or inspired by something that was in the surrounding area to the plaza or to the surrounding buildings. It was just to try to tie it in with the design of the recreation portion of the plaza.
That's correct.
In the drawings, you have like picnic table style seating in front of the stage. Is that going to be wood or is that going to be steel?
Is Tim Blake,
Yeah, he's here at the meeting in person.
yeah, I believe he has some information on the outdoor furniture.
Yeah, all of the outdoor furniture would be the polywood, commercial grade, composite, all weather. I'm trying to think of a better way to describe it. The base is there. There had been some discussion with the city staff as far as the permanency of the three tables that you see up there front. And what we were trying to do there is just to instill communal style seating that would be all weather, all season, and how they were set up. The remaining seating will all be movable because obviously the plaza is repurposed often, and as part of the license agreement and the transfer agreement, we're going to need to be able to do a lot of other things there. So I don't know if anybody from city staff could speak more so to we were under their direction for those tables up front.
Well, and the reason I ask is I was just trying to see if I could get the timber to make sense for the space in general, even if it doesn't necessarily make sense across the downtown. I'm just thinking of the other plazas downtown, and this stage feels really different than the aesthetic going on across the rest of them.
We worked with Brad Anderson for quite some time in coming up with different prototypes for the stage, and I don't know if he's able to add anything to that conversation, and it is why we headed that direction, but that.
Just speaking from an acoustic standpoint, the timber ceiling especially was the optimal surface for sound quality that was recommended by the sound engineers that our staff consulted with. The columns, posts, and back wall weren't necessarily a recommendation of that, but the ceiling material as a first choice was. Metal would have been the last choice, and concrete would have been somewhere in between. So, but we didn't specify that, and kind of depending on what this board and the final decision by the contractors would be, we would, as from a public art standpoint, our visual art specialist is on this call too, but we would be of interest as to whether or not future paintings or murals or something could be added to that stage if it's acceptable to Tim and identified as a project of interest for the city. It does give us a blank slate for possible other aesthetic enhancements, but we're letting this process kind of go through and then deciding how to best respond once it's decided.
So it sounds like all the furnishings that would be in the plaza would be a polywood, so that there would be a relationship between the furnishings in the plaza and the beams supporting the stage. Is that a fair statement?
I'm seeing a lot of nodding on Zoom, so.
Does that address your question, Katie?
It does. And I will say, I know I've asked a lot of questions. This was a big project, and I'm excited for this. I don't know if that has come across, but I think it's a great project, and it will add an element to our downtown that I think we've been missing, of a gathering place for social and fun. So I appreciate the work that you're doing on this, and sorry for all the questions.
Does anybody have any questions about the fencing, the perimeter fence, or fencing materials? Okay. We kind of focused on the pathway in the south, but it is a perimeter fence, and we'll have a gateway. Dustin, I don't know if you could find the entryway from Santa Fe just to reinforce that.
Yeah, give me a moment. I'm over here showing it, it's not on the screen. So yeah, there's an entrance off of Santa Fe, and as Mr. Andrew mentioned in his report, the fence will actually be set back a few feet from the property line, and so that there's an opening that opens towards Santa Fe with a Campbell Plaza plaque sign just noting the area and calling attention to that you are in Campbell Plaza as you go through the fence. And here's a picture of the walkway for those that aren't going into Campbell Plaza but are wanting to get from Santa Fe to the parking lots and other activities and events happening to the west or to the east.
So are there any additional questions from the board about staff's report as it relates to the building exterior, the staircase, the stage, the fencing, or the new stage?
No.
If not, we would take time to hear from the applicant or the applicant's architect, or either Mr. Wilson or Mr. Blake, if they want to provide additional detail about their project, and then we would see if we have any additional public comment.
Any questions from anyone? I think everyone here has been.
Any questions directly for Mr. Blake, the owner-operator of the restaurant?
I don't see any on Zoom.
Any additional comments from Mr. Wilson or from Mr. Knight?
Got it.
I don't have any.
Okay.
No, I don't have any other comments either.
So we would see if there's any interested member of the public, either here in person or on Zoom, Dustin, that might want to provide any additional comments.
I think the other members attending the meeting are all city staff, so if Mr. Anderson or Mr. Toitz has anything to add, then that would be a good time. But if not, then I think that answers that question. There's no other public involved in the meeting at the moment.
So if we have no further comment or questions, I'll refer the board to page 12 of your report. And the options are to approve the application for the proposed Campbell Plaza renovation project in its entirety. You could approve the application in its entirety, subject to any conditions or any revisions to the plans that a majority of you approve. If you so choose, you as board members could approve certain elements of the project and request that certain design elements be revised or redesigned and brought back to the board for reconsideration. You could postpone consideration of this application if you feel like additional information is needed in order for you to reach a decision, or you could deny the application upon making findings of fact that would support a denial. So rather than voting on the individual items, we have given you the opportunity and options 1 and 2 to approve the project in its entirety. And we just, under option 2, had a condition dealing with the standard condition about any significant changes. The other option is if there's any particular element of the 5 that we emphasize that you think needs further work or revision, you could separate that out from your approval. But if, after your review and all the information presented at today's hearing, you want to approve the renovation project as proposed, that would be option 2.
I will make a motion that we go with option 2, that we approve the application subject to any conditions or revisions.
Do we have a second for that motion?
I second it.
We have a second and on the motion to approve the renovation project subject to the condition that if there's any significant changes to the Campbell Plaza renovation plans, these changes would be brought back to the board's staff to determine whether any additional review by the design review board is required. So we have a motion and a second. I would call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries 3-0. And that would bring us to item 3.2B, which is a companion to this. And it is, you've seen a number of what we refer to as sidewalk cafe license agreements. Mr. Romy has experience with that process and review himself. And so as part of this application, there is a request for design review board review and recommendation as to the use of Campbell Plaza as an accessory to the restaurant next door, the Prickly Pear Grill and Cantina. So as we mentioned, the indoor restaurant would cover 2 stories, would have seating for approximately 143 individuals, and this request that's before you is to add an outdoor serving area, which would also serve as a recreation area. And what makes this area unique is that while it's also an extension of the Prickly Pear, it will also have a semi-public access and can be used for public events and other things based on a scheduled basis. So whereas most sidewalk cafes downtown is the area set aside exclusively for customers of the adjoining establishment, this is going to have a mixed use where it can be used for people to sit and order and enjoy food and drink from the Prickly Pear, but it will also be available for public use and programming through Arts and Humanities and Salina Downtown Incorporated. So, Mr. Hers, if you could just bring up the site plan. As we pointed out, the total plaza is 50 by 120. The area here we're talking about is 42 by 117, taking off the south 8 feet and the west 3 feet. If you subtract out the artificial turf activity area and the new stage, we're looking at about 3,200 square feet of area. The plan shows 9 square tables with 4 chairs each. 3 of the tables would have umbrellas as depicted. There's also 4 rectangular picnic tables shown on the plan, along with 8 individual lawn chairs. Under the sidewalk dining ordinance, the maximum size for a sidewalk dining area is 200 square feet. That is primarily a limit that would apply to a sidewalk area. This is a much larger plaza area, and the size of that has already been addressed to a degree by the master license agreement between Mr. Blake and the City Commission. As to in most cases on a sidewalk dining area, we're looking at planters, we're looking at light poles, and those types of things, looking for physical obstructions on the sidewalk. In this case, we have a relatively wide open plaza without many permanent physical obstructions. We would just note that for handicapped accessibility, there's a minimum 5-foot path of travel that needs to be maintained between obstacles or obstructions on the plaza. In terms of what we would refer to as the barrier, or what would define the plaza area, we pointed out that it's a 3-foot tall powder-coated steel tube fence. That fence will leave an 8-foot open area along the south for people who are cutting through and getting to the parking lot in behind, or going from the parking lot to Santa Fe. The ability to disassemble and remove the barrier without damage to the sidewalk when the site is no longer used. Staff would note we didn't receive much detail about how the posts will be anchored or attached to the plaza floor. We would note that on the majority of our sidewalk area set cafes downtown, we've utilized what is a surface-mounted anchor that was designed to be removable. And so we would request some additional detail about the anchoring method. And so we don't have any specific catalog cut sheets or specifications for the furniture proposed. It appears that the tables, chairs, and benches are a wood product, but we would request the applicant or project architect to provide catalog cut sheets or product specifications confirming that. And then we would just note that the ordinance requires that the table and chair components be rated for outdoor use, include a multi-year commercial warranty. We understand there's a plan to install overhead LED string lighting. One thing we would note that this area will not conform with on a standard sidewalk cafe area. There's limits on having outdoor music in the dining area, particularly amplified music. This is being designed with a performing arts stage, so those particular guidelines about background music would not come into play here. We would request clarification about whether there's any plan to have wall-mounted or mobile heating devices that might extend the use of this into the cooler times of the year. We did not see any canopies or awnings on the plan and would request clarification if we're interpreting that correctly. So our comments about the review of this is that we would request some additional information about the support posts for the fencing, the method of anchoring, the materials, specifications, and warranties for the outdoor furniture. If there are umbrellas proposed, and if those would extend to more than the 3 tables, if there's any plans for any awnings or canopies, if there's any plans for heating devices on the plaza, and any plans for exterior lighting beyond the LED string lighting. So our process for review of these is that these applications are filed with the city's planning division. They're reviewed to the zoning administrator, to the design review board for your review and comment. Based on your recommendations, an actual license agreement is prepared based on your recommendations. If the agreement is approved, it can be renewed for any subsequent year that the area is in operation. And so staff is responsible for coordinating compliance and monitoring conditions at each of the locations. And so we've reviewed the initial application, determined that we would need some additional information about the fixtures and furnishings and lighting, and we feel we need that in order to make the required findings that the plaza dining area would comply with all the city's sidewalk dining guidelines. And so we don't actually issue a building permit for sidewalk cafes. There's the license agreement serves as authorization to use the area, and so staff feels like a certain level of detail is needed. And so, again, to clarify, we would request some additional information about the anchoring system for the posts that would support the fence, and any specifications for the outdoor furniture and umbrellas, if there's any plans for awnings or canopies, any plans to have heating devices, and any additional exterior lighting plans. And then we also have a question about, we think that this is a planter area, and we just had a question about any plans for what would be placed in that planter. So with that, I'd be open to any questions that board members have about staff's report or any of the graphics we put on the screen. If not, we'd like to hear from the applicant's team about the fence supports, the furniture, awnings and canopies, and any plans to have heating.
We can start with the fence supports. Dan or Jacob, can you speak to the?
So the fence supports, basically the base of them, each post will have a 4-bolt pattern that will anchor directly into the concrete with basically a Tapcon or a concrete anchor.
So it won't be surface mounted, it'll go directly into the concrete?
Jacob, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. No, it'll be surface mounted, just the Tapcon will go directly into the concrete.
Okay, so that would be similar to what the other have done downtown. As far as the, I think Tim touched on the furniture, but could we get a little more detail about the materials of the outdoor furniture, whether it's the same for all, or if there's any difference between the 4 chair tables and the picnic tables?
They will be very similar in nature, and our design team is still working on that with what's available and with but they, from a composite makeup, the polywood was one thing that they all have in common, so they're going to have a similar touch and feel and texture. We wanted something that was going to be all weather, all season, and those are higher end products and higher quality products than just traditional exposed wood, bare wood. But I think everything that we've looked at out there is very similar. If that's specific enough, would you like?
Yep, we just need to know the material and that it's rated for outdoor use.
Okay.
Are there any plans to have any awnings or canopies that would extend out from the building?
Not at this time.
Okay. And have you given any thought to having heating devices, either wall-mounted or any kind of mobile heating devices to extend the use of the tables?
We have, and we've chosen not to go forward with those right now. We would bring those through separate application if we chose to do that.
Okay. And other than the LED string lighting, is there any plans for lighting for the plaza area? Any overhead lighting or just the string lighting? Dustin, did any of those drawings show any kind of like wall-mounted lights along the south facade?
Jacob referring to those drawings. I believe there's some exterior, and I apologize, I forget the technical term, the lamps.
Probably be on the north side of the north wall of the building, Dustin.
Well, there's a lamp post here that I was
Okay.
I don't know if there's any wall pack lighting. So I'm not picking up any in the rendering anyway.
I think we removed that lamp post that's out in the middle of the plaza. This was an earlier version.
Yeah, that's correct. The lamp post is
And
not going to be there.
Yeah, and I think we talked about adding a few wall sconces on the prickly pear wall.
Okay. So some wall pack lighting on the south wall of the restaurant building?
Correct.
And then final question, just clarifying, is that a planter, and is the idea to have flowers or plantings in that, is that a planter box? Are we interpreting that correctly?
Yes.
And is that where the grease interceptor for the restaurant is going to be located?
It is.
Okay. So I think that addresses staff's questions and hopes provide some clarification for the board. So your options as it relates to the Sidewalk Cafe license agreement would be, you could make a recommendation to approve the Sidewalk Cafe agreement to establish an outdoor dining area in Campbell Plaza. You could recommend approval subject to any conditions or modifications. You could postpone consideration if you need more information before taking action, or you could recommend denial of the application. Our comment was if the applicant addresses the questions relating to furniture and fixtures and the fence anchoring system to your satisfaction, then staff would recommend option 2 with the standard conditions that are on page 9. Before we take any action on that, I would, defer to Mr. Hers to see if we have anybody interested member of the public that would want to speak on the license agreement.
Is there anyone on Zoom who would like to speak that hasn't? It does not look like we have anyone on Zoom who would like to speak.
So I'll turn it back over to the board for discussions and deliberations about the Sidewalk Cafe license agreement. You're welcome to ask any additional questions you have of staff as part of your deliberations.
I don't have anything.
Okay. Then we would, if that is the case, then we would entertain a motion from any interested board member who'd like to make a recommendation.
I would move to approve option 2 with the staff recommendations 1 through 8 included in that.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the Sidewalk Cafe license agreement with the stipulations on page 9 of the staff report. Are there any questions about the motion? If not, I would call the question, and all those in favor of recommending approval of the Sidewalk Cafe license agreement for Prickly Pear, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries 3-0. Tim, that's a recommendation, and we'll turn their recommendation action into another license agreement that you will sign.
Okay.
So we'll get that to you. You get to do a second one, so,
That's okay.
all right.
Thank you for your help.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, so what we decided to do in the absence of Mr. Martins, who's kind of readjusted his schedule, we don't have any administrative items tonight. Our next regularly scheduled board meeting is October the 14th on a Thursday. We do have items filed for that, and as part of that, we would try to hold our annual business meeting and election of officers. We are also looking to have an orientation or study session, and I know there were some questions about whether to do that before or after the regular meeting. So for the 3 of you here, if we had an orientation and training for board members, would it work better for you to have it after the regular meeting that starts at 4, or to have it ahead of the regular meeting, like starting at 3 or so?
For me, it's after.
After? Does it make a difference for you? Does it work either way, Kevin?
Yeah, it should be all right
Okay.
either way, so.
Do you have any that works either way better for you, Katie?
I am not going to share an opinion either way because I may or may not be able to attend that meeting.
Okay.
So,
All right. So for Jennifer's benefit, I think what we'll try to do is we'll try to hold the regular meeting, and then we'll hold a study session and orientation following the meeting, and that will be in 107B, before we have that, we will, on the agenda will be the election of officers. So there's always a risk that if you don't or can't attend, that you still might get nominated for something. So you can't,
We'll make sure we do that.
can't be sure. So it's,
I heard that loud and clear, Dean.
okay, so that will be on our October 14th meeting, and that will definitely occur because we have, I believe, 3, possibly 4 applications for that meeting date. So if there's no other questions or comments for staff, we would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay. We have a second for that?
I second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, we are officially adjourned, and we thank you for your time and attention this evening.